Hi, I'm John Celestrian, and I want to welcome you to SIOR's Fall Global Conference here at the Palmer House in Chicago. And I'm really happy to have an old friend, a long-standing friend, not an old friend, a long-standing friend, Michael Brennan of Brennan Investments. Michael, good to see you again.
John, good to see you. Thank you for the invitation.
Sure. How's business?
Business is fantastic. We have 23 million square feet. We're 99% leased. I've never been 99% anything, but we're, so, you know, I mean, it's a sign of the times. We'd like to think that our management has something to do with it, but
sure,
it's a sign of the times. So the tenants continue to expand. They're out there. A lot of that has to do, I think, with, you know, just kind of getting back to some of the backlog that people didn't order in 08 and 09. Mm-hmm. So a lot of this is sort of catch-up orders.
Are you still dealing with that backlog?
I think we are. I mean, I think we are as a nation. I think when you, for instance, see where the auto industry is. Mm-hmm. And the auto industry is not unimportant for industrial people because it has right, a long supply chain. Right. So they take a lot of space.
Sure.
So they're building 17 million cars a year, whereas a good year used to be 13. Mm-hmm. So I think you'd have to attribute that to backlog.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. When you launched in 09?
Well, we launched in 10, bought our first property in 11, yeah.
It was O'Hare-based, right?
Yes, we headquartered in O'Hare.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you're in how many states?
Now we're in 22 states. We're coast to coast. We have an office in San Diego, one in Houston, one in Tampa, and one in Chicago, and nice, hopefully going to open up an office in the Carolinas and in the D.C. area as well.
What's driving your market push? Where are the hot markets, and why in those markets? What are you seeing that's driving you there?
Okay, it's a great question. I think number one, just in a real simple way, is that we want to go where the industrial buildings are at. So we're going to large consumption zones. Mm-hmm. So there's lots to choose from, lots of tenants out there. So those would be the big pockets that you could imagine: the Texas Triangle, mm-hmm, Southern California, Chicago, Florida, including Central Florida. So that's number one. I think number two is we want to also go where the capital is at. It's not only important for how we get in, but it's important for how we get out.
Right.
Yeah. So, but the second thing I think is that the nation's demographics have changed. The nation's infrastructure has changed. 20 years ago, I wouldn't invest, for instance, in Louisville. Where today, Louisville is a 50 million square foot market that's 96% leased and is just booming because of UPS and because of e-commerce.
Right.
So we went
right,
down there, and I bought a building that I once built with a partner, a new partner. And so that would be an example of a market that 20 years ago we wouldn't have gone to, but this year we're going to. Or Salt Lake City. Again, a great city, but 20 years ago it was sort of a regional market. Today it is demographics and its job growth have made it just a tremendous place to invest.
Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of focus on Salt Lake City, I've noticed, in the past few years, which I think is interesting. It's always been a not there place, you know, and all at once it seems to be rising in everybody's attention. Also, the capital has changed as well. I mentioned before when we were chatting before we started to roll about a conversation I had with Bob White, and it's come up a couple of times in our videos here about how a lot of foreign capital, which was in the previous upcycle, the 2005s, 2006s, was focused on gateway cities, is now spreading out into secondary and tertiary markets, largely because of industrial. I'm thinking of the Macerich deal that just, kicked with the Sovereign Wealth Fund. What are you seeing?
Foreign capital is coming here for a lot of different reasons and coming to secondary markets for other reasons. The United States is a safe haven. When you Brazil, for instance, their debt was just downgraded to junk.
Right.
China is getting softer. There's problems in the Middle East. The developing countries, because of the softness in China, are getting softer. So United States, because of its laws and because of its economy, because of its relative strength, is seeing a lot of foreign capital come in.
Right.
Industrial's movement to secondary markets, though, is not just because things are expensive in the gateway markets, but because they've found in those markets, the more they're here, a fundamental justification for investing.
Interesting, right.
So I mentioned Louisville. I could have also mentioned Columbus or Minneapolis, a very strong market. So the more they're here, the more they know more about some of these markets and what drives them.
Right.
So I think that the United States is a beneficiary of inflows, especially when there's the perception that there's trouble brewing in the world or economic slowdown in the world. So I think we can continue to see more foreign capital from whatever the source, and especially from China, as that economy slows down, maybe matures, and when there's a liberalization of capital flows out of the country.
And you think that that's a long-term play? Do you think that we're going to see an influx of capital for the long term?
I do. And I think that we're going to see an influx of capital into industrial. So 25 years ago, industrial wasn't perceived as one of the top 4 product categories.
Right.
And then it was. And then it was harder to get foreign capital interested in industrial because maybe it wasn't pretty enough. It wasn't a shiny building, or they hadn't visited it on their visits. Well, today they're seeing that, wow, it has steady cash flow characteristics. We can get a nice distribution every month or every quarter. The occupancy levels are high. The fundamentals are good.
Right.
So we've been able to find a receptive audience for people that are interested in investing in industrial.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to end.
Yeah.
Mike, it's always a pleasure
Thank you,
to see
John.
you.
Good to see you.
And I want to thank you for joining us on Globe Street TV.